So what is this? This is the Pearl Abyss Q2 22 earnings presentation. And so this is what basically you type lurk and the bot just tells everyone that you are lurking. Okay, all right. So this is the Q2 earnings presentation. This is what Pearl Abyss puts out to investors. So this is the audience, the target audience for this is not gamers. It's mostly not people, people that are consuming the game. It's for people that are investing in Pearl Abyss, the company. So the point of view that Pearl Abyss puts out here is quite different than what we see usually, and so it's quite interesting if you want to understand things like what direction is the company heading, where are they putting their money, are they being profitable, etc., etc. So you can get all that from the Pearl Abyss investor relations site. If you just look at Pearl Abyss investor relations, then you can just download the presentation down here. It's very easy to find if you want to look at it. But as I said, I'm happy to guide you guys through it. All right. So the first page that they always start with is the operating revenue overview. So operating revenue in Q2 22 was 94 billion Korean won, and if you look at the history, it kind of, they had a very good fourth quarter, but other than that, it's pretty stable. All right. If you're wondering what that is in dollars, that's about $72 million. So in terms of, is this a huge company? No, it's not. Right? It's a mid-sized company with about 1,500 employees. Pearl Abyss overall, and CCP is a fraction of that, and EVE Online is a fraction of that, and we'll see how big of a fraction in a second here. So. 94 billion Korean won, operating revenue kind of steady. What are they saying are the highlights of the second quarter of the year, which is April, May, June 2022. In terms of Black Desert, they're saying they expanded self-publishing to South America. As EVE players, most of us don't care about Black Desert, but it's a big part of their revenue, so they always start with that. They had a user meeting, which is their bad translation for basically a FanFest equivalent, and then they had some updates to the game. When it comes to EVE, they're also saying user meeting, which means FanFest in Reykjavik, which took part in May. I was there. A lot of you guys were there, and so even though it seems like a long time ago, this actually happened in the last quarter that they're describing here. And in terms of game updates, they're saying EVE Evolved and the Air Career Program, which is exactly what I complained about last week on this stream. There isn't really a lot of new content to talk about, and yes, EVE Evolved is great with new graphics and new sounds and a new UI, and the career program is great for new players, but I think a lot of us veterans are not really happy with the lack of latest game updates. W Running, do they keep a different graphic for operating revenue in regards to our streaming schedule? Unfortunately not. Operating performance is the next interesting thing. So this is the operating revenue we're talking about. Operating profit was actually negative, and that seems very daunting if you look at it at first. However, if you compare to the second quarter of last year, you can see that that was also quite negative. And the reason for that, and apparently they explained this on the investor call, is that they have a employee stock incentive program that just costs a lot of money, and that they always, for some reason, they don't spread it out there. It always happens in Q2. So oddly enough, the net profit here is 32 billion kwon, right? Which is much higher than it has been in the last 6 weeks. Fabricio, thank you for that. 24 months, Jesus, dude. I think you're number 1 or number 2, Fabricio. So thank you. 2 years, man. Appreciate it, my dude. Appreciate it. And so, yeah, the net profits, they're actually quite huge because they got a tax refund. So, you know, none of these numbers apparently matter greatly because all of them have some kind of odd thing happening. So, you know, you have to look at it in terms of the past year, not really the quarter. The quarters don't really tell you enough. In terms of revenue breakdown, this is always where we see very interesting thing. Oh yeah, and Nev, who is actually our guest, Crota, is saying in chat, overall revenues were as expected, but the loss was unexpected. Labor costs and marketing higher than expected. Yeah, and that loss is mainly, and we'll see that on labor costs, that added labor cost is not because they hired so many people, it's because of that employee incentive program, I think, is what they said on the call. Which is all translated from Korean. So this is the revenue by IP, and this is the really the most important graph if you're an EVE Online player and you're trying to understand this. So Black Desert is doing fine, apparently. Black Desert had increasing revenue over the last 3 months. Now you have to pay attention here that this is all in Korean won, right? If you convert this to US dollars, then you're taking the conversion rate into effect. And the Korean won, actually, if you look at the Korean won versus the dollar, you can see that it's tanking. It basically lost 10% of its value compared to the US dollar. So if you were to take this and convert it to US dollars, which makes sense for some things and doesn't for others, makes sense for some things and doesn't for others, then these numbers would be lower, right? Because they, you would have to do that for every quarter, and it would be messy. But if you're looking at EVE Online numbers, for example, who don't get their main revenue from the APAC region, but a significant part of the revenue from the US, then that is quite significant, all right? So what did EVE Online revenue do? It went down from 18.2 billion to 17.6 billion Korean won. So if you convert that to dollars, that's about 13.5 million dollars, right? In that quarter. So the overall yearly revenue for EVE, for the EVE IP, which is EVE Online and EVE Echoes, it comes out to about 55-60 million, which we also saw in the CCP financials that we discussed here not so long ago. Hey Varag, evening, and I know I owe you a contract acceptance. I saw your message, which is deja vu from last week, by the way. So yeah, so this is a decline, and this is a significant decline, but I have to say, this being, as Velimir says, this being the quarter where we saw the sub price increase, I expected this to go down a lot more. However, the sub price increase is going to show itself. The impact is going to show itself over the next year as subscriptions run out, as people let accounts lapse, etc., etc. So here, that's one reason why it didn't drop as much as some of us may think. The other reason is, if you convert this to US dollars, which, as I just said, does make sense for EVE Online, then this drop is actually much bigger than just 18.2 to 17.6, because over this period of time, we saw the Korean won lose quite significantly against the US dollar. So here it does make sense to do that. So however, this is also 2 summer months in these revenues, so you know, basically things aren't fantastic, but they're also not as bad as expected, at least from what I expected. All right. Now, oh, by the way, Harry Eve, congratulations on winning that raffle, man. I'm gonna start a new one right here. Harry, make sure you send me a message either on Discord. You know what to do. You've won these raffles before, or a message on Twitch. All right. Here is a new giveaway. And exclamation mark raffle to enter. So this not as bad as expected. However, you also have to remember that at this current run rate over the last year, CCP actually lost $8 million right over the year. They lost $8 million on revenues of, what was it, 60 million, right? So they had quite a significant loss last year, which can be traced back to mainly due to their investment into R&D and the new games that they're developing. So something that isn't unusual for gaming companies to do, to invest in new new properties and to invest in new games. And while that is happening, you oftentimes see them taking a loss, because then revenues actually do hit when the game is released. You know, as you can imagine, development costs are much higher typically in the before launch than after launch. So overall, though, reduction in EVE Online revenue, IP revenue. And again, this is EVE Online and EVE Echoes. If you look at the regions here, 50% is coming from NA and EU. In this case, this is for them for all the revenue, though. So not only EVE IP, but also Black Desert. And in terms of mobile versus PC is gaining again. This is just an overall interesting aspect that is, you know, that's interesting from perspective of you know, where's the market headed, at least for these games. W Running says R&D and new games development, so it is literally completely lost as far as CCP is concerned. They are actually developing 2 large properties right now. One is a EVE Online related FPS, and one is a mobile 4X game. Presumably also in the EVE Online universe? I guess so, right? Now, if you're looking at the actual expenses, then you see that you know, quarter over quarter is not as interesting. Let's look at year over year. So this is Q2 22 versus Q2 21. So this is what's actually relevant. You can see that their labor expenses went up by 10%. So they are hiring more people, which is the same with CCP, by the way. That their commissions have gone down, but I don't really care. Advertising has gone down by 17%, which must be mostly Black Desert, because for EVE Online they're actually advertising, I'd say, more than they were a year ago. I might be off though, but I think I remember that from the CCP financial numbers. Depreciation and amortization is 4% increase, but that's not very significant. And then they have 17% increase in etc. And I don't know what etc. is. So we'll see. Velamir, PI mobile game when? Yeah, I would love to be able to adjust PI on mobile, not on a different game, but for actual EVE Online content. That'd be sick. I think that would lead to hyperinflation in the game, though. If everyone was able to adjust PI or restart PI while they're on the toilet or on the bus, then that would significantly increase PI production, which probably doesn't. It actually doesn't lead to inflation. It just it actually just leads to devaluation of PI as an activity overall. Market crash in PI, yeah. It does, right? It would be a good mobile game for sure, but it's not. It would have to be quite more a bit more exciting than the current state. Because right now it's fine as a mini game, but as a standalone, PI is not going to survive. All right. Unless you pay your mobile subscription to tweak PI with PI components or with Plex, you know? Yeah. So that could be a good. Although right now we don't need any more Plex syncs, man. Plex prices have gone crazy enough. Yeah. Be cool. Yeah. So number of employees, interesting here. What we're seeing is an increase in employees. It's not the highest. In Q4 21, they had 1572, and now they have 1515. So their employee count actually did go down, but it's higher than a year ago. So cool. All right. Capping off with the Q3 highlights. So what's coming up, right? Blah, blah, Black Desert, I don't care. This is the interesting stuff because for EVE, they're saying EVE China, a new server, and this is the new dawn, the server reset scenario that I was talking about in the beginning. They're actually launching a fresh server as a test with a whole bunch of changes, like a new map and new functions and new high-sec safety settings and all that sort of stuff. We'll go through that at the end of this of the show today. I am going to talk about that after the interview with Crota, but I think that's a super interesting experiment. And while they're saying, yeah, no, we're never going to do it for Tranquility, I think if they do it in China and it's wildly successful, then they're going to consider doing it in the rest of the world. I mean, it would be stupid to completely rule it out at the beginning right away, right? But yeah, okay. I wouldn't want that. Yeah, I think most veterans don't want that to happen on Tranquility, just because there is. Like one big thing about EVE Online is the whole history and the continuing world. So I think it would go against a lot of things, but maybe launch it as a parallel server, something like that. Yeah, the second thing they're saying is new language Spanish, but yeah, whatever. And this is their new IP that they're bringing up, but this doesn't include the CCP IP. Okay. That's it. We have financial statements in the end, but we're not going to talk about those details. Okay. So,